have any questions about Franciscan life or religious life?
What makes Franciscans different than other religious orders?
That's a good question. St. Francis lived 800 years ago, and during his time, what we know as religious orders really didn't exist. The only thing that existed was monasticism or hermits. And those are lives that are called, people are called to kind of leave the world, to be holy. Francis, he heard his call to be in the world and to build up the church. And so for him, the religious life took on the form of being like a monk, but in the world. And so it's helpful to look at how a Franciscan order started, to flesh this out a little bit more. Francis, as a young man, heard the call when he was praying in front of the San Damiano cross, "Francis, go rebuild my church." So at first he started just building churches with bricks and mortar, rocks and mortar. But then soon after that, in the Mass one day, he heard the gospel, "Take nothing for the journey, but go proclaim the kingdom of God, cure the sick, cleanse the lepers, and take nothing for the journey, not even a tunic." And so he said, "This is my call. This is what I'm called to do." So he started to do that. And as he did that in the streets, we read in his testament towards the end of his life, he said, "And God gave me brothers." When people saw him preaching in the world and being very holy, others were attracted to him. And so the brothers came to him and said, "Francis, what should we do?" And they started living together and camping out in the streets, perhaps, if you will. And Francis says, "Let us go ask the Lord." And they went to the Church of St. Nicholas and opened the book of the Gospel 3 times. And the passages they got were Matthew chapter 19, verse 21, where the rich young man comes to Jesus and says, "What must I do to be perfect?" And Jesus said, "Go sell all you have and give to the poor." And so the Franciscans said, "Well, that's what we'll do." Then they opened up to Luke chapter 9, verse 3, and that was what Francis had already heard in the church before, but from a different gospel, but the same idea. "Take nothing from the journey and proclaim the kingdom of God. No money, just put on a tunic," and that becomes our habit. And then finally they read, "Take up your cross and follow me," Luke 9, chapter 20, verse 23. And our Franciscan habit really becomes our cross. It's in the shape of a cross. And so our Franciscan life is really formed on following Jesus and the disciples as they're found really in the Gospels. It's not based on any particular ministry, but on being holy but in the world, and using your gifts and talents in every way that God really calls us. So for Franciscans, we live together in community and live the gospel and help each other live the gospel, but we each then express it in different ways according to God's call and our gifts and our talents. So we have many different ministries in the Franciscan order, and that's one thing. It's not built around a particular ministry. The idea that we live in community, it's actually a very fulfilling thing to have the support of brothers, live in the same life with the same values, but it can be a difficult thing too. We have to learn how to get along together. And I think that helps makes us a better person. It forms us to be more humble, more down to earth. St. Francis made a comparison. He said, "What the cell is to the monk, the brother is to the friar." And so the cell for the monk is a place of holiness. Living in community and learning how to get along with each other actually helps make us holy, much like a marriage can. Franciscans have a special solidarity with the poor. Christ did. And so Franciscans do too. And the idea that how Christ sent out the disciples, sent them out 2 by 2, and then they came back and reviewed everything they'd gone through and refreshed themselves, that's a big part of our life too. We're sent out to preach the gospel, to proclaim the gospel in whatever way God really calls us to do it. Then we come back into the brotherhood and the community and renew ourselves and pray and share what we've done and then get sent again. And finally, Franciscan life is particularly about joy. The gospel is about joy. Right? Jesus says the kingdom of God is like someone who found a treasure in a field, and then in joy went and sold all they had and came back and bought that field so they could have that treasure. And that really is one of the main things. Christ is so real and so centered in our life, it fills us with